I'm here with Mayor Warren Waddell, and we'd like to have a little bit of a monthly catch up if Warren's got time to discuss the recent council meeting. Hi, Warren, how are you?
Hi, Martin. Thanks for having me on your program.
Great. Tell me, what have you been up to this weekend? Any council related events?
As a matter of fact, this weekend was quite busy and quite varied. It began with the launch of the Remagine art contest at Wallarobba on Friday night. It then led to today, in particular, was quite varied. I had a pony club, local pony club gala event, followed by the regional awards and presentation for scouts. Rounded off with the Metro North Swim Carnival at Gorson Aquatic Centre. So quite a full.
Oh, well, I'm glad I didn't go for my swim this afternoon. I went yesterday. I wouldn't have got any lanes.
You wouldn't have got a look in. It was at capacity. Um, the commentary from attendance was that it's just performing brilliantly, given that they had various club participants there. It really filled the stands and filled the pool, and they were still there when I left at 5 p.m.
That's amazing because the water temperature is beautiful, but swimming in the winter, literally June, is a solid effort. Pretty impressive. Last
And
week, you
sorry, I was just going to say, in addition to that, just to round off on the various uh, types of events that occur over a single weekend, is that we also opened the ground floor level of the Greenway Park clubhouse. Now, that's a particularly long process where Julian Leese's office originally provided a grant for the construction of the clubhouse in its first stage, but we weren't able to build in underneath. So at a later point in time, through a state-funded program and with assistance from council funds, we completed and opened on Saturday the clubhouse. Effectively, it's change rooms, canteen, storeroom, all the stuff that you typically require in a modern contemporary clubhouse environment. In particular, catering to the gender mix, as you're aware. We see considerably more female participation in these disciplines. There's at least six club disciplines that rely upon this clubhouse. So when I look at the weekend as a whole, you've got our engagement with the art community on Friday night, the sporting community on Saturday, and then on Sunday we have the equestrian scouting movement and swimmers.
that is phenomenal, and that's just a couple of days. In fact, actually, before we came on, I saw it's a good segue. Actually, I saw I think it was an Instagram post about that event, and that leads me. I'll go a bit out of order here. We'll come back to the council meeting. Your presence on social media is a lot more dominant now. What's happened on that front?
Effectively, Martin, to be completely honest, there's been an intervention. I I skills in this place. So as the ambassador, I guess, or the face of Hornsby Shire Council, our comms team felt that a little bit of professional tidy up was required. So we have excellent people between our engagement manager and communications manager, brand manager, copywriters, graphic artists, etc. They are far better equipped to address the level of communication that's required in these contemporary times, especially social media. So they have taken the supervision of that space away from me, so that we communicate properly with our constituents.
Well, let me say it's pretty impressive. The one that got my attention was the 5th of June, where you had this big event in relation to the World Environment Day and the work you were doing with the Koala Park Sanctuary and the Hills Wildlife Sanctuary and the Hornsby Rural Koala Project and all those environmental type things. So, given we're the Tree Shire, that was a pretty impressive. Do you want to give some background to that?
And look, that's a classic example of what they've been able to do in respect to packaging up the activities. To be completely honest, they are entirely different events, occasions. For example, I'm attendee on occasion to the Chamber of Commerce, the Hornsby Chamber of Commerce breakfast meetings. One of the members of the Chamber of Commerce is the Koala Park at Pennant Hills, and I was approached by the Koala Park probably 7 or so years ago. There'd been a family shift in terms of who was going to administer the park. They were interested in how they could progress and be part of the broader business community moving forward. We encouraged that. In the meantime, they've gone from sort of 1 resident koala to 9 now through that program. There was under construction while I was there the wildlife hospital. There's talk of potentially having some form of camp out, where people can stay overnight. It was very much a single occasion where, as a member of the Chamber of Commerce, we were celebrating their progress and their role in entertaining inquiries from the visitor community. Now, in addition to that, I've grown up in the Galston area, as you know, and years ago there was a conservation space created off Carter's Road, which was the wildlife sanctuary, where it was specifically about caring for injured and wounded kangaroos. The people involved in that, over time, they were unable to sort of sustain the committee presence. As it happens, Ben Essen and his crew of volunteers have picked up that facility, generated a whole heap of generous contributions and grants and so on, and resurrected that space, and with a broader focus on wildlife protection and cure of any injuries, etc. So that was something I'd been trying to get around to visit for some time, which I was able to do. And then, of course, there's been the ongoing work of Lily Swartz through the Koala Project, which is bridges across the Hornsby and Hills Shires, especially around the Maroota State Forest area and so on. So whereas I perhaps might have had a post in relation to each of those individual occasions, the comms team packages all of that activity up to showcase the involvement that Hornsby Shire Council has in its support of the bushland shire and its wildlife that it contains.
Well, thank you for that. Just as a comment, Ben Desson does a lot of good work, doesn't he, in that space? And congratulations to the council, because I think the spread of information that we see now on their different social media outlets really does show what the council is doing. So I commend that to any of our listeners. If I may, Warren, could we shift gears and head to the council meeting?
Of course.
Thank you. I'll give you I was at the meeting, and it was a good meeting. There was a fair few people there, a number of items. We know there's a lot of things that get passed by exception method, but there's a lot of background to that information. To the extent that you can share anything, that'd be great to hear. Maybe I might give you a hit list of things that I noticed, and you can pick and choose what you would like to dive into in the time that we've got. So there's things like the King's Birthday lists, the council committees, footpaths, Johnson's Road, citizenship ceremonies, the supplementary business paper on tree and vegetation clearing, the community strategic plan, the adoption of the delivery plan and the budget, I assume, process, and we've already touched off on social media. So where would you like to start, Warren?
Look, the King's Birthday was interesting this year. I was a guest of the Governor, Governor Beazley, for the Saturday celebration at Government House. And subsequent to that, we received the list of recipients of the Order of Australia, plus, of course, the special award for service to the Rural Fire Service for Andy Cameron. So the follow-up meeting, being the Wednesday, was a good opportunity to highlight the members of our Shire community that received those awards, and we took people through that on the night. Subsequent to that, as you stated, there are a number of reports that are extremely important, delivery programs, operational programs and so on that have to be adopted by council, but because of the work our team puts into those documents, very rarely are they the content contested, and that sort of proved to be the case on the night. Demonstrates their capacity to brief us effectively on the content as it's developed. Following on from that, what was the other item you mentioned?
The supplementary business paper for illegal tree and vegetation clearing, because that wasn't on the original agenda.
Correct. Yes, that was important. So it was supplementary because sometimes there's a delay where there's other third parties or referral agencies or whatever involved. But essentially, we made a submission and were supporting the state government's initiative to be harder on those that are engaged in illegal tree removal. Which was opportune timing in a sense, because as you might recall from a previous council meeting, that the council supported a review of our tree management protocols, our tree management policies, not because we in any way, shape or form wanted to diminish the importance of the bushland shire and the trees that we're responsible for. Quite the opposite. But we wanted to make sure that the way we manage applications that contain references to tree issues, the way we manage the compliance, the way we manage inspections, because we were getting counter issues in respect to what occurs during storm events, danger and safety around public spaces like over footpaths and so on. So it was really just a broad review of everything to see if best practices was being applied. But in the meantime, this initiative also came through from the state, which happened to just coincide with our own review. So it wasn't difficult to take that on board and respond as and when we needed to.
That's nice and clear. Thank you very much. Footpaths. My story is I run along Pennant Hills Road, as you know, and there was a little section outside McDonald's there on Thornley where the trees are hidden. And a few nights ago, must have been Wednesday night, I went for a run, and you've fixed up all little sections where there's little lifts in the concrete, which for me was very useful because occasionally I've had the odd tumble. There's a few things at the council meeting about footpaths, and as a whole, it seems pretty impressive. What's your take on footpaths in the Shire?
Look, the beauty of footpaths is it's effectively what we term core business. So it's terrific that from time to time we have singular projects or grant-funded initiatives and so on. But at the end of the day, we're essentially responsible for waste management in particular, rate collection, the delivery of essential vegetation clearing, footpaths, curb and guttering, stormwater, that type of civil works. So it's important not to lose sight of that core business. And Councillor Tilbury brought to the meeting 3 motions that in different ways referred to the footpath topic. One was simply just to bring to the next available briefing a review of our current annual footpath budget, which sits at $500,000, because of the buying potential being greatly reduced. What $500,000 bought you, 3 or 4 years ago doesn't buy the same now, probably about 30% less, for example. So you need to keep up with that to even stay on par with the original delivery quantity. Now, we have had opportunities in the past where we've got at least an annual spike in the available budget, so I had to return to the original, but for 1 year we were able to deliver more just to sort of reduce the wait list. The proposal is to effectively double it to $1 million. So the obvious question is going to be during the council briefing, well, where is the money coming from? For me, it's always goes hand in hand. I always look at both ends of the equation. So as you know, I have a keen interest in making sure that the council operates efficiently in terms of its asset management, recycling assets, fees and charges that all these different opportunities that might have just slipped through the cracks and aren't being maximised, help us raise that sustainable annual income, not just from a one-off sale, for example, which doesn't really help us in the long term. So we'll have to see what the discussion reveals in terms of where funding will arrive from. But I'm quite sure our finance team and effectively our finance team will look into the options and give us. Look, the first thing they'll say for sure is what do you not want to do? Mm. So it's always a exchange of priorities. But having said that, there is flexibility in different revenue streams, and sometimes it's just about some discretion as to where you assign those priorities. The second one was about a specific initiative where the state government, despite their culling or killing off of many projects when they came into office, things like New Line Road and so on, that were seemed to be deferred in perpetuity, they did keep open the active transport opportunities or go active paving opportunities. Now they, very deliberate. They're about filling in locations with a substantially more than just a regular footpath, but like almost a two-way street for pedestrian and cycleway and mobility scooters, all those activities that occur off the road, potentially, to be catered to on an active transport corridor. Now, in the rural area, we effectively don't have a rural footpath strategy. We have an urban one, but we don't have a rural one. So, but we're not prepared to just, as you know, I'm previously an A Ward councillor and I'm from the rural area, so I'm very conscious of the lack of infrastructure in that respect. So there's two things that potentially could relieve the situation and create biggest bang for buck. One is one that we already have in the system, which is Galston to Dural, which has been previously sort of costed and just to a very limited extent worked up as a project and been submitted and declined previously. The one that Nathan put to the meeting was to do something similar, but Glenorrhea to Dural. Where it differs from the other is that it could ultimately be on the Hills Council side of Old Northern Road, could be on both. It's hard to know. So the point of the motion was that the feasibility of that was investigated. So no doubt in my mind that if it was achieved, it would be substantially well received, but it's a long way. So the feasibility might, for example, state that, look, it can be done, but in 4 stages, or we don't know. So the idea was to activate that discussion, and the Hills will align with us in putting a motion of a similar nature forward. Now, the third one was very specific. It was to a location in Barawa. It relates to parking around Barawa Station. Now, look, it's not so much a case of cherry picking projects. This one has a chance of being, funded by state agencies, State Rail or Transport for New South Wales, because effectively we may be able to guilt them into what's required because it's ultimately their infrastructure that it's servicing. And we just have concern for our residents as a result of the way in which pedestrian activity is being conducted now. So yes, it was flavour of the month was paving. And we covered a bit of ground with that. I think we did an effective job of relieving councillors broadly of any concerns they might have had with the motions, because despite some questions and some debate and so forth, all 3 went through unanimously.
I must say it was very well done in the meeting. I was at it, but as a further point, this is not a question, it's a comment without notice. There must be thousands of kilometres of footpaths in the Shire if you really sort of map it out. So it's a pretty hard job, I'm sure, to prioritise. But as long as some people realise that and something's happening in their location, I think everyone's on a good footing and it looks really good from that point of view. It's a
I
big
think it was.
area all the way to Wiseman's Ferry.
You're correct, and I think this is where Councillor McIntosh's amendment was proposed. Is that there's not really a wholly identifiable process for. Obviously, staff have sort of modelling where they look at where maintenance is required, and they could be proposing even footpath links to be replaced that date back to councils before our time. You just don't know with the wait list and so on. The point that Councillor McIntosh was making is that if we had an opportunity to demonstrate or flag these projects online, where it's very transparent. And for all to sort of see, I still think it's very much the role of councillors to be that conduit from the community to the administration. So if I was hearing, and you saw this occur in Cobar Road near North School in previous delivery programs, like if we're hearing from a lot of people in one location about one project and we're hearing from no one about one we've got on the plan, it's reasonable that we should look at some change in the prioritisation. So footpaths are the same. If you're not hearing from anyone about one, or you haven't been able to qualify or establish how it got there in the first place, because I say it could well have been another councillor at another time. So you've got to be a bit careful. But so we are that conduit. But at the end of the day, we have to have some sort of process around it, because we're not just cherry picking for other reasons, or prioritising one ward over the other. There's 3 wards and they all have need.
Thank you so much for that. I've taken a lot of your time. What I'd like to do is shift just briefly from the environment and infrastructure to people. Tell me a little bit about all the citizenship ceremonies you've been doing.
Look, citizenships are terrific. It's probably one of the main privileges of the role, and certainly I enjoyed participating in citizenships almost on every occasion that they were run during Philip Ruddock's term as mayor. And it was especially rewarding that Philip Ruddock had a role in some respects. He was the architect of the affirmation component of the ceremony. So, and of course, his years as the Minister of Immigration in the first instance was very helpful in understanding our immigration flow over the years. So I stuck with it, and now, of course, I'm further privileged to actually be the conductor of the ceremony. I think, on review, we must be getting things pretty right as far as the experience goes, because it's obviously all about the candidates and not about us. But I don't think a day goes by when someone doesn't mention to me unsolicited how much they enjoyed being there for their son or their daughter's citizenship, or their parents, or themselves. Our staff review other citizenship ceremonies that are conducted by other councils. They attend other ceremonies as part of their research, and they almost never come back with recommendations for change. I don't know exactly what we've done to draw attention, but we even have the good grace of Her Excellency Sam Mostyn joining us next Wednesday for citizenship.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So very pleased that the experience of those receiving naturalisation is a positive one, and the importance of it is celebrated, because obtaining statehood is a very, very important process, especially if you've experienced the opposite of losing statehood or struggling to succeed in previous statehood of country of origin or birth. It's not a light situation. It's life-changing. It offers security and all that being an Australian citizen affords you.
Warren, thank you so much for your time. I hope we might be able to continue this on a semi-regular basis after a council meeting. Is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up before we finish?
I'll just thank you for you taking the time to. I know you're a serial attendee to our council meetings, and I think it's important that we have observers like yourself where we get good feedback because we're involved and engaged in the actual process, so we're not really quite aware of how that's being received. We are live streamed, so it's important that we know how we're projecting those processes to the broader community out there, not just those that are in the chamber. So we appreciate any effort that's made to help people understand what goes on.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time, Warren. Just
You're
stay
welcome.
there. Thank you. I'll close the session now.